Well, let's take you back to one of our top stories tonight. The Investigating Directorate has revealed its plans to extradite the Guptas, their wives and business associates to join their South African counterparts in facing charges. Gupta associate Salim Essa, Iqbal Sharma and 3 former senior Free State government officials appeared in the Bloemfontein Magistrate's Court today. They're accused of fraud involving 24 million rand. Joining us is the NPA's Investigating Directorate spokesperson, Sindisiwe Seboka. It's a face that will be familiar to many Newsroom Africa viewers. Sindisiwe, good to speak to you, although in a completely different capacity. Let's talk about the Guptas and their whereabouts right now. Do you know where they are?
Yes, we do know exactly where they are. However,
all right. It looks like we've just lost that link to Sindisiwe Seboka. We'll try and bring her back up on the line. All right, apologies for that. President Cyril Ramaphosa has conceded to failures in all spheres of government and its entities. He says poor planning and inadequate implementation are hindering development, while corruption and patronage have made things worse. Ramaphosa was speaking to Parliament during his budget speech response that the presidency is looking to change all of that. Newsroom Africa's senior reporter Pelane Pachadi has more.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has had his administration tainted by allegations of rampant corruption and blatant looting, and his response, the president was quick to applaud law enforcement agencies for uncovering the corruption and recouping millions siphoned through dubious means.
There is no form of corruption, no matter how seemingly insignificant, that does not damage society. Corruption is not a victimless crime. It deprives the poor in our country of resources that are rightfully theirs. It starves the economy of investment, in that those who would want to invest in our economy are kept away by the stench of corruption. It leads to a degradation of public infrastructure and services, and tragically, it ultimately does cost lives.
South Africa still faces an enormous challenge of water. The government's aging infrastructure and corruption in tenders have riddled all efforts to ensure that South Africans receive what is an inherent basic human right, water. President Ramaphosa says there is movement in addressing the thorny issue of water and sanitation.
Many of our people do not have access to reliable supply of water or sanitation.
The president also commented on the state of the public service.
We must, as we have done, acknowledge that there have been failures of governance in several areas of government, in municipalities, in departments, both at provincial and national level, and in our state-owned enterprises, and a number of other government entities. As the NPC diagnostic report identified, development has been constrained by poor planning and inadequate coordination. And perhaps the most debilitating of factors has been corruption.
The president has harshly condemned gangsterism and violence that is ravaging communities and calls on law enforcers to turn the tide. At the same time, he says he now sees signs of recovery of the South African economy. He explains that the focus of his administration is economic reform. With this view, the COVID-19 pandemic has forced the government to start reconstruction from a low base up. The evidence of growth, the president says, is seen through the trade surplus that the country has recorded for the first time in 18 years. The president also announced that South Africa has secured sufficient vaccinations for the entire adult population, adding that soon at least 100,000 people will be vaccinating in a day. For Newsroom Africa, Channel 405, I'm Belane Pachadi in Johannesburg.
All right, let's take you back to one of our top stories tonight. The Investigating Directorate revealing its plans to extradite the Guptas. You'd remember earlier we tried to connect to Sindisiwe Seboka, who is the NPA's Investigating Directorate spokesperson. Sindisiwe, hopefully the line will hold up this time around. You were telling us where the Guptas are.
So basically, we cannot obviously give you the details, but we do know where they are. However, it's not just the Gupta family as well as their wives. However, there are other people, the Gupta brothers and their wives. Other people also are required and being looked for. We have also sent through or started rather the extradition process to the UAE and to India. So the process is to the UAE and to India. India, you know that South Africa does have a treaty with India. However, with the UAE, we're going to utilize other means, and in particular, the United Nations Convention, in order to try and get the Gupta brothers back.
You talk about the fact that their wives are also being sought. What are the allegations against them?
So what happened in court today, which actually ties up to exactly the question that you're asking, is that in the feasibility study contract worth just over 24 million, we then found that the money was then siphoned out of the country to a particular company, which then siphoned it out to various companies that led to a Gupta-owned, Gupta-controlled company where Adu Gupta, we're alleging, had the full control of that particular company. His wife also had control in terms of being a director in the company that benefited. So did Rajesh Gupta and his wife in one of the companies. So the money was moved around in order to conceal its origin. So that's how the money laundering charge emanates. So we're saying that the Gupta brothers, as well as their wives, are guilty because of the directorship positions that they held in those companies, and Adu Gupta for the facilitation of how the money is laundered.
Are there particular challenges that you're expecting to face in this process, despite the fact that you've roped in Interpol?
So extraditions are tricky. We've not actually been quiet about this. Advocate Herman Gwenye said in Parliament many times before that it is a challenge, more so to some of the countries that we do not have treaties with. We have a request or extradition request that is currently proceeding to trial stage now in the ESCOM 745 million rand case, where Michael Lomas is going to appear for trial from the 20th till the 21st of December this year. But even in that matter, even though that's trial stage, we can never be certain that the extradition court will find in our favor. So even in this particular matter, we've sent through the request, we're complying with the various provisions that they've required. However, it's always to the receiving jurisdiction to then make a decision as to whether we fulfilled all of those and then to either extradite the required persons or not.
It sounds to me that it involves also quite a bit of lobbying, perhaps some negotiations on an inter-country level?
Definitely. So the ID submits the process to the NPA. The NPA then sends it to justice. So there are various people in the food chain that then have to be part of the process, international relations and various other persons and the central authorities of the receiving states, just to mention just a few of the people involved in the food chain or in the chain to make sure that the information is then got into the receiving state. And once it gets there, then another process takes place. In the British courts, then it has to sit before a British court. The people have to be arrested there. A trial has to take place. So different jurisdictions require different things. However, the start point is normally the same, that these people have to be charged. A warrant has to be out for them in many of these states. They need to be mentioned in a charge sheet. It can't be people necessarily of interest in some states. So that is the process that is currently going on. We fulfilled some of the requirements, but in order to not get into further details about it, to jeopardize the process, that is where we'll leave it right now.
Given how many processes are involved in this, are you confident as the NPA that you'll be able to prosecute the Gupta brothers, their associates, and even any other individuals on that list before this decade is over?
We are punching above our weight. That's what the Investigating Directorate is mandated to do, to punch above our weight. That's exactly what we need to do within our 5-year period. We're on a 5-year time frame, of which 2 years has lapsed. We came into being in 2019 mid-year. So we're in 2021, 3 more years to go. So we're saying at the very least, we're going to send out as many of the extradition requests to the various countries to get as far as reasonably possible to make sure that we at least get some of these people to come back and account. But in the interim, those that are in the country will feel the wrath of the prosecution system.
So you've got about 3 more years, and I'm sure there are different conversations that you have, and I understand your difficulty in terms of the messaging that you have to get to the public versus the reality of the process that you're up against. Realistically, do you think that this is something that can be done within the next 3 years?
More impossible things have actually taken place. We're very optimistic. Since inception, we're able to get a restraint order for 1.4 billion in the Eskom matter. We are going to do quite big things in the next couple of weeks. We were able to finalize the case that is currently before court in less than 6 months. We are going to give the accused in this 24 million rand case a docket wrapped in a red ribbon as soon as bail hearings have been concluded on Monday to show that investigations have been wrapped up. We've told the court that investigations are done. We have the docket. We're not going to postpone like the normal course of events for further investigations. We're done. We want a court date, a high court date where this matter can be trialed and trialed vigorously, whether the Guptas are here or not. So what we're saying is we're going to proceed. The 24 million rand case in the Free State will be prosecuted with or without the Guptas. But when the Guptas arrive, should the Guptas arrive, because we're optimistic, then we'll prosecute them as well.
The NPA's Investigating Directorate spokesperson, Cindy Siwe Saboka, let's leave it there for tonight.